Thank you very much. Thank you. Hand up, let's go, people. We're burning daylight. Look at it outside. We're almost out of daylight. There's only so much daylight in this world. Good day, yeah? It's a zero-sum game. All zero just like that. Can we turn in the quiz into this room? How many quizzes do we have here?
All of them.
All right. Thank you very much. Now, before we get started, I'd like you to acknowledge something. The rat.
Oh, the rat.
The rat. And also, Captain Kirk.
Oh, we love that.
Captain Kirk has fallen. As we all know, Captain Kirk is Canadian. Yes. Huh?
Oh, yeah. You gave us a little bit.
Yeah. I did not. I didn't realize that. Did anyone catch it besides you? I really didn't. All right, so just a quick review. Did we get to? We're right there. We got Chester A. Arthur. He was obsessed with pants. That's another story. He had over 10,000 pairs of pants. Okay, so what are we missing? Oh. Who is using monopoly power or other price discrimination to really put farmers in a bind? And farmers called it the crime of '73, which put the U.S. financial system on what? The gold standard. And what was the regressive taxation in this era that hit farmers and other working people the hardest? What is the tax? What's it again? Tariffs. Tariffs and tax on imports. What happened is it's not direct tax on consumers. People import goods from overseas have to pay the tax. But then what do they do to the price of the goods? They raise the prices to cover the tax. So the tax actually hits everybody. That's what's happening right now. You go to Home Depot and you pay $1,000 more than you did 5 years ago for a washing machine because of the tariffs. And I know daily you guys buy washing machines. It's starting to bite. It's starting to hit you. I would say that's not the most efficient thing, but that's your thing. Washing machines. Not dryers.
My house is very entirely
Let me study. All right, so. Oh! Who was the boss of the New York machine? Hannah was Ohio. Hey. Tweed. And what party was the machine in New York? Democratic. What party was it in Ohio? Republican. So most of the urban areas that had machines were Democratic, but there were significant Republican machines. I mean, Ohio was huge. And in Ohio, have you been there? Who's been to Ohio? I've been there many times, and I don't want to talk about it. I might have to go back this summer. Because I'm lucky. Actually, it'd be a good thing. My niece is getting there. It hasn't decided if it's going to be a full marriage or they're just going to go. And then you know what I'm for? Whatever they want. Moving on. All right. Hey. So, Homestead was owned by Carnegie. Who did he leave in charge to destroy the union? Correct. And what is it called when they didn't allow the workers in so they could give up the union? And why did public opinion turn against the strikers? It wasn't a bomb throwing. This time it's a knife wielding. Anarchists. A little bit different, but an anarchist destroyed that. And so, we got a very problem. What was the group that tried to regulate railroad rates in states, but it was thrown out because of interstate commerce? Yeah, those are the Grange or the Grangers. And so we got right to here. We got to Jeff's Ray Arthur.
Yes.
Arthur was a stalwart. And Garfield was all over the place. And this cartoon is, I like this one. So it's Pro Garfield riding this noble steed towards the Capitol, and he's got to carry Arthur. That's luggage on his back. Yet Hancock has got the problem of the Democrats being tied to it. It might be hard to see for you, but secessionist sympathies. Remember, so many of the Democrats, so many of the Democrat or the party went Southern after, the Whigs fell apart. So let's go and get to the actual election. Oh, let's jump right here. One strategy that was very effective, and it had been effective for Republicans for 15 years, was waving the bloody shirt, accusing Democrats of being the party of secession. And they would literally bring in undershirts, implying it's the undershirt of a Union soldier, and they dump like pig's blood or cow's blood on it. Literally have this bloody shirt, and they would wave it in front of Democrats, or wave it at their own rallies to remind people, to show that the Democrats were the party of treason. Arthur didn't want to use this strategy. He thought it was very divisive. And that's the problem. It was divisive and effective. But here are more stalwart Republicans making him put on the bloody shirt to use it in the campaign. A little awkward, but, and here's waving the bloody shirt on in Puck magazine. And this campaign, the issues were more like which team is better, Democrats or Republicans. And there's an element of that, that today, I'm on the better team. It really wasn't what they stood for. And so the election, it would be razor thin. The elections in this era were all close. Congress was bitterly divided, both Democratic and Republican. And the Democrats were really divided. Boy, can you see the solid South here. The Democrats are great. The general election, the popular vote was really close. Only 10,000 votes separated them. But Garfield was elected president. I went on the way to find an older green and red one, against my constant anger at the blue state, red state. And then we jumped ahead. So Garfield became president, and one thing immediately plagued Garfield. Immediately, all of these people claiming that they helped the Republican campaign showed up as soon as he was elected in March of 1880, or as soon as he was inaugurated in March of 1881, lining up to get a job. I helped you here. I want a job. I want to work at the customs house, which you can get a lot of really rich through kickbacks. I want to work in the mail office. I want to be an Indian agent. They would line up every Tuesday and every Thursday at the White House. Line up the blocks long. It's so weird to think about. Knock on the door of the White House and ask to see the president and ask for a job. Try it today. See what happens. First shake on the fence. They really appreciate it. You just climb over if they don't open it. Don't worry about it, and we'll see you in 5 to 10. But one of those job seekers, and Garfield hated this. In fact, his only real relief was going back home to Ohio. His family, for the most part, stayed in Ohio. They didn't want to live in Washington, D.C., so he took the train back. Shows you how much the country had changed. He can be back home in 4 hours. It's kind of remarkable. Ride the B&O and get back to Ohio. And sometimes his family would come east. They would meet like at Cape May, North Carolina, or Cape May, New Jersey, or places like that along the coast, kind of a little get away from Washington, D.C. So he would walk all the time through the streets of Washington, D.C. to escape job seekers. There were no guards for the president yet. I know you should, you probably already thought, what about Lincoln was assassinated? They thought that was an aberration of the war. That was over. Jackson's assassination was somebody they found guilty by reason of, and literally called it reason of insanity. And so they weren't worried about it. One of those job seekers was a guy from Cleveland named Charles Guiteau. Charles Guiteau believed that he was owed a job. He believed that he's not only worked for Garfield, he got Garfield elected because he wrote letters to newspapers. And he expected to be given the job of ambassador to France. Garfield had no idea who this guy was. We know for a fact he would line up every day and he talked to Garfield at least twice and bugged the Secretary of State almost every day till the Secretary of State banned him from his office, James G. Blaine. Said, get out of here. Guiteau First lived in a boarding house, went through all of his money, got a little bit of money from an inheritance. Soon he's living on the streets and became obsessed with Garfield is not giving him a job, and Garfield is going to destroy the world by not giving these government jobs. He was going to bring peace to France. And so, one of the days when Garfield walked to the train station to go meet his wife and family, Guiteau was waiting. He had been stalking him for days. Walked up behind with a loaded pistol and fired in his back. Right? It's black powder. It's a revolver, but it's black powder, so it went into, cracked his vertebrae and went into his stomach behind his. The statement that Guiteau would make after he was captured, overjoyed, thought he might even be rewarded, even though he's going to be executed. I'm a stalwart, and Arthur is president. You don't need to write that down. I just thought that was a good quote. The amazing thing was, also another way to look at it is the hell for Garfield. He lived for another 6 weeks. They tried everything. They used prods to find the bullet. They couldn't find it. They did exploratory surgery. They couldn't find it. He said, do not give me morphine, because that opioid had been around since before the Civil War, because he wanted to be clear-headed. So he was in absolute agony as they tried all of these things, and they could not find the bullet. They even put in the paper where they thought the bullet was. So this was from the New York Herald. This picture of it behind the spleen. I just thought this was amazing in the paper, so now you get to see it too. Alexander Graham Bell made a primitive metal detector and tried to use that to find the bullet. They couldn't find the bullet. They just poked and prodded, and eventually Garfield passed away. If they would have done nothing, there was a very good chance he would have lived. One of those strange quirks, because the infection did not happen for a long time until it finally did. Probably because of all the poking and prodding. I should add, they were just learning about germ science. This is just the beginning where they started doing things like, well, we should kind of clean the air, wash your hands, wear a mask. That was all just coming, but not quite yet. So now we have Chester A. Arthur. And even though Arthur was a stalwart, because of Guiteau, 81. And he'd only been president for 6 months. Arthur had to sign a civil service reform, ending the old system of patronage, creating a professional civil service. So most federal government jobs are not at the whim of the president. They are full-time professional jobs. And to make sure they're professional, they have to pass an exam and do a certain level on it to achieve. So if you get a civil service job, you must pass some kind of exam. That goes for everything, including the Army. You have to pass an exam. These are all civil service jobs. So every time there's a new president, the vast majority of bureaucrats, government workers remain the same. And that is good. You get professional ones who aren't worried about political gain. But at the same time, you might get ones that are there for a very long time, and they might be opposed to the person who is in charge. And so there's issues, good and bad, with it. I think mostly good. This is kind of a big issue right now. And every state would follow this. So we live in Helena, all the jobs with the state, those are all professional civil service jobs in the state too. So Arthur, but there's no way stalwart and what happened and with Garfield, he kind of wanted to be president again, but it wasn't going to happen. So the Republicans going to move someplace else, despite the fact that Arthur had 10,000 pairs of pants. He was obsessed with pants, and we change his pants 7-8 times a day. Who else is like that? Yeah, you have how many pair? Yeah, at least 50. Yeah, Arthur would like to buy old pants. So his prized possession, for example, he bought John Adams pants.
Did you wear them?
Oh yeah, he had them. He was a lot bigger than Adams, but he had them sewed so he could wear them. I want John Adams pants.
That's weird.
I think that's totally normal. Who's with me? Yeah, why we should. So moving on to 1884. Oh, before we get to that, let's get a little bit of news. I said it's time to get to headlines.
Cute. Did it win?
I don't know. I want to know who won, the cow or the pig.
I
Or do they finally become friends?
Pigs are good.
By the way, speaking of current events, so there are people absolutely going insane. Have you noticed this? About the fact that people are insane and that Taylor Swift is dating the best tight end in the NFL, plays for the Chiefs. No, but whatever about that. And there are people going nuts about this. Like, who cares? And this has been a big news item, I guess, on Fox News, that is part of a massive plot to adjust the election in 2024. I am not making this up. And what does that tell you about people? Because there's a lot of people that seem to be really upset with Taylor Swift. I know nothing about Taylor Swift except I heard she's very popular. Yeah, she's by far the most popular artist, and her concert tour was like amazingly huge. And tickets were running anywhere between $1 and $1 million, closer to the million part. I had a bunch of, I knew people who went, I know nothing about Taylor Swift. I just know she's very popular. Huh?
I didn't go, but I know some show ideas. Like, there's a lot.
And I heard it was an amazing show. But I just find it amazing that people are worried about that. I'm more concerned about this thing. Moving on. But the big reason it's making news on Fox News is because they say that they're going to do this surprise announcement after the Chiefs inevitably win the Super Bowl, that they're going to be supporting Biden. That's the big thing, which is kind of funny. Taylor Swift actually supported Biden in 2020. It's like, so he probably isn't. But I think it's really funny. Moving on, 1884. So Grover Cleveland, now the Democrats have a great opportunity. But the Democrats are still bitterly divided. And so they nominate, what's the term for a candidate no one knows?
Dark horse.
Cleveland is the ultimate dark horse. In a 2-year span, he went from private citizen to mayor of Buffalo to governor of New York to president of the United States. That kind of rise is unprecedented. From nowhere to becoming this. And he had hired a substitute during the Civil War, and that might have been a big issue even 4 years earlier, but there was kind of an effort to kind of put the war behind. The bloody shirt campaign kind of went away, and so Cleveland could take advantage of that. And Cleveland promised things that farmers wanted. He was called a goo-goo. Goo-goo. Wait for it. Goo-goo, good government. He would reform, and remember the Credit Mobilier and all those scandals? That could take advantage of that. Also, he said, regulate railroad rates after the Granger laws fell apart. And he promised to cut tariff. He wanted more free trade. That would cut prices. So he said he's going to do some things farmers wanted. Now, he was still very much pro-gold standard and other issues, but this could appeal to farmers who felt they were left out. The Republicans were in absolute disarray. After everything that happened, with assassination and the Great Compromise of 1877 and all the corruption. And so they nominated James G. Blaine of Maine. But Blaine was tied to Credit Mobilier. And so you can imagine how the Democrats immediately started hammering him, hammering the Republicans on corruption. That's the goo-goo thing. And so they really hit that. In fact, the Democrats, well, let me get to this. A lot of Republicans, or enough of them, who were kind of straddling the fence, so to speak, worried about corruption, would vote for Cleveland. These Republicans who thought there was too much corruption were called mugwumps. Anybody know why they're mugwumps? Okay, you get the idea of straddling the fence, trying to bring both sides. So you're straddling the fence, meaning their mug is on one side of the fence and their wump is on the other side. Get it? Mugwump. So that's where the term mugwump comes from. And the Democrats immediately started this little chant about Blaine and his corruption, tied to corruption. James G. Blaine, the continental liar from the state of Maine. Pretty good. But then something came out about Grover Cleveland. Grover Cleveland was the most eligible bachelor in America. I know. Now, so you can imagine how men were jealous. Women could not vote, but they would swoon. I know, right? It found out he'd had a child out of wedlock. Now, this was a big deal, even though this kind of thing has been happening since there have been humans, but, and we're not going to go into the details of this. It involves a stork, go ask your parents. But, here's a cartoon of the baby, and this became a political scandal. And so the Republicans responded with another chant. Do you want to hear the chant? Mama, where's my paw? Gone to the White House. Ha, ha, ha. Yeah, I know, you rhyme ha with paw. You kind of lose something there. I prefer James G. Blaine, the Continental Liar from the state of Maine. But now the Democrats, farther away from the Civil War, and there's still a significant number of Democrats in the North. New York is now, that's where Grover Cleveland's home state. And so Uncle Grover swept into the White House. The popular vote was still incredibly close, Cleveland slightly winning it. But remember, that doesn't matter. Electoral College, the solid South, and these states here, and Uncle Grover's in the White House. Well, March of 1885. Uncle Grover, he is my great, great, great uncle. I know. Yeah. If I could pick somebody, I wouldn't have picked Uncle Grover, but it's Uncle Grover, yes. He's my great, great, great uncle. The point about popular vote is huge. Every state now, whoever wins the popular vote gets to electoral college.
They elect the people that cast the electoral college, so that matters.
Yeah, so you go in there, and when you go in the state of Montana in 1880 or 2024, you get a vote? You will? So, when you go vote, you don't vote for the four electors. You vote for either, it's going to be Biden or Trump. But then you vote for Biden, you're voting for the four electors. So, that's why they come. All right, shh. So I repeat, the thing about elections, you're going to hear a lot of garbage about elections here pretty soon. In fact, you're hearing a lot of garbage right now. Now, there's some things we got, obviously it's very important, but a lot of it's also this horse race stuff that's kind of boring, at least to me. But remember, it's not, all the popular vote matters is each individual state who wins the popular vote in that state gets all the electors. That's why they count that. So almost certainly, Biden is going to win the popular vote in Michigan. There's a very good chance he could win by as much as 9 or 10 million. But he won by 7 million in the last election. But that doesn't matter because it's the Electoral College. And all we're going to hear about are just the states that are going to be really close, especially Georgia, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, maybe North Carolina and Florida. States are going to be razor thin. Are they going to hear about Montana? No, Trump is going to get 60 to 65% of the vote in Montana. Is he going to hear about? Are you going to hear about California? No, Biden's going to get almost 70% of the vote there. So, moving on. Uncle Grover's in the White House. And he finally, after a few years, nothing was done about the tariff. Of course, he was still for the gold standard. But remember, you have to get laws passed through Congress. And Congress is really difficult to pass a law. I mean, they finally did pass a tax law yesterday in the House, and that's like people are just blowing, they just can't believe it. They passed a law. But in 1887, the Interstate Commerce Act was passed, creating the Interstate Commerce Commission. And that would be a commission to stop price discrimination by the railroads. So it would replace the Granger laws because Congress has the authority to regulate interstate commerce. And it would create a 5-member commission that would regulate rates. And this represents this commission. And they're trying to get control, see the fucking Broncos right here. So they would control price discrimination, control monopolies. It was seen as a big victory. How did railroad feel about this? So they would step in and regulate railroad rates. The railroads at first were furious. And they went to a lot of Democrats and more Republicans and said, we paid for you. Vote against this. And then Richard Olney, who was the head of the it was the Boston and Maine Railroad. It's a relatively small railroad, but it's important because it's New England. And he said, wait a second. The people want an ICC. They want something like this. And if we don't give it to them in 1887, they're going to get more and more upset. And what might happen in 5 years, 6 years? We might have socialism. We might have the government take over the railroads. And that was a real possibility, they said. Let's give them something. Let's pass a law. Because this is the secret, the dirty secret of these. No one reads the laws. What if we get what we want in there? What kind of people can be on the Railroad Commission? Put railroad. And that became the plan. Almost immediately, especially under the next president, Republican Benjamin Harrison. Or what are we passing around here? Lotion? Chapstick? Good. It's going to be filled with railroad men. Harrison will fill it with lawyers from the railroad. One of the first commissioners will be Richard Olney, the same one who said, we should put our people on there. And perfect. You have all these regulatory bodies now, but who gets on them? Railroads. You know, sometimes it might be when they create the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. Sometimes it might be people really, if the president is really concerned about food safety, they put someone concerned about that. If they're not concerned about that regulation, they put people representing the food industry. So, you know, President Trump was not concerned at all about environmental regulation. In fact, he was opposed to them. And so the head of what is the body created 50 years ago? The EPA. He put an executive from a coal company in charge. We're the biggest polluters in America. Now, we could say that's a good policy or bad policy. That's not the point. The point is, it's probably not going to do a lot of regulating. And that's what happened here. So that's a real problem with regulatory bodies. There's no rules. And it was written in such a weird way that it had no power to enforce. And so they basically just suggest what you should do. Do you see a problem with that? And so the ICC had no teeth. And here's the big issue. Everyone's excited. We got the ICC. It's going to regulate these railroads. And then over the next couple of years, it became quick. It became apparent really quick. It's doing nothing. In fact, if this is passed, are the railroads going to be more careful about price discrimination or less careful? Less, because they say, hey, we got the ICC, everything's fine. This opened the door for more price discrimination. Well, 1888, another presidential election. Cleveland's going to run for re-election. He's going to get, he will get married. But he's going to run against Benjamin Harrison, a Republican. His grandfather was William Henry Harrison, remember the president who died a month after his inaugural address? What state's Harrison from? Ohio. Yeah, they're all. And before we get to that, this election, razor thin. And you'll notice something. Now, the red here are Republicans, blue are Democrats. I'm trying to mix it up. But Cleveland's own home state, really close vote, but it went to Harrison, so Harrison got all those electoral votes. Cleveland won the popular vote nationwide, but remember, that doesn't matter. Harrison won the Electoral College. And Republicans came in and they did the math. We'll probably lose the next election if we keep going like this. And it's be right after this election, Republicans have this narrow window where they're in charge in Congress, and they created a bunch of states here to make sure they'd all be Republican. And that's why they made 2 Dakotas out of 1 Dakota territory. That could be at minimum 6 electoral votes. And that's why there was a Montana at that time. Actually, it was real close to being 2 Montanas. They about meant eastern and western Montana, 2 different states. It was close. But then Idaho said, no, we want western Montana. And then there was some some wheeling and dealing. Next thing you know, we got our massive Montana. Well, 1890. Put 1890 on top. For some reason, it's not coming up. Harrison, same deal as ICC, knowing that the people want action and they got to deliver. In 1890, the Sherman Silver Purchasing Act would be signed. William Tecumseh Sherman's brother, John Sherman, had been senator for over 30 years. One of the most prominent Republican senators from Ohio. He was actually a dying breed within the Republican Party. He's kind of one of those, the first original Republicans who was much more economically not as conservative. The best way to look at it, not near as conservative. It's going to buy $4 million of silver every month. That's about and eventually buy about 4.5 million ounces of silver. You notice I'm using the old abbreviation of ounce. I don't know. I don't have any idea why. I just am.
Is there a new abbreviation?
Somebody might see OM. So, ounce. So, this really helped mining towns. One mining town in a state, this brand new state called Montana, the gold had played out. It's called Butte. And this kept the mines in operation in Butte, mining silver, because $4 million a month, that's a big boom. That's a big boom to Montana. And it hit the right time the miners are going. There's always copper next to silver, so it's easy to ship the copper. And thus, that's really see the copper boom coming. But what did they do with the silver? Farmers thought they were going to print or going to coin money, creating inflation. Did they? No. They literally took this money, this silver, I'm sorry, in bricks, and they stuck it in the basement of the Treasury office first, and then in various government buildings, federal government buildings all over the United States. Just basements full of silver. They didn't do anything with it. Therefore, inflation, not at all. A little bit. They were pumping money into mining towns. So this was a big deal for like Ludlow, Colorado, Montana, those kind of places. But no place else. And it didn't take long for them to realize they're not minting silver coins. Then, the same year, last thing for today, the Sherman Antitrust Act, same John Sherman. This would be a bill. It said no illegal restraint of trade. Now, I know what a lot of you are thinking right now. Well, of course, obviously, no illegal restraint of trade. Illegal restraint of trade, yeah, that's monopolies. Monopolies, by definition, are illegal restraint of trade, according to Sherman Antitrust. So monopoly uses their power to drive competition out, to make special deals because they have monopoly power. Or just being a monopoly is a restraint of trade according to Sherman Antitrust Act. And that's what everyone accepted. Monopolies could do this. So this really sounds like they're going to do something about monopolies. Remember, they're called the trust. Did they? Oh. You want some fun? Read the Sherman Antitrust Act. Because it's still the law behind it. It's crazy. It's crazy.
I guess that's part of like internal and foreign. You talk about this. Of course, you get access to the like, hold on, you just sign right here, and then we'll be what I see. Like you'll see,
yeah, and you gotta remember, that's on purpose. They're written very confusingly, so only certain people can decide.
You have to sit there and you have to print them out and
it's tough. Well, then we have unlimited terms. Today, after 1947, it's the president can serve the maximum. Now, Trump claims he's going to never leave. He's elected. But yeah, according to the Constitution, he can only serve one. Oh yeah, he said many times. And then he's going to get picked up. Have a great day. I know you're sad. Tomorrow's Friday. Babe Ruth, okay. But I'm Babe Ruth, buddy. See you tomorrow, everybody. Goodbye. Good luck. Rock your fine work. Hang by your thumbs. That's pretty clever. I like that. See you. Bye. Good luck tonight. Good luck in Bozeman. You'll be fine. See you tomorrow.
Mr. Partridge.
Yeah.
We came up with a system for remembering
Yeah,
the
we've been
president.
practicing our presidents. There's like lots of quizzes.
Yeah.
We've been doing.
Like with Bulletin Mover, we just say coo-coo.
Goo-hoo.
No, my whole thing is gonna be.
Ah, goo-hoo.
No, I'm gonna do
Mr.
30
President's
song.
right picture. We aced yesterday. We got 45.
Awesome.
I'm just
All
gonna
right.
have to sit there and sing the song. I'm gonna learn the song and you'll watch me sit there and go. Da, 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 da.
The thing about it is, if you get enough, like, and they just fill in the blanks, we got awesome. Sing the song.
Did you read Kelton?
You what? Oh, that's a good way to remember. That's how, it's kind of like songs remembering stuff. Who would like a quiz today? I know, you're excited. Oh. Are they good?
Yeah.
Where are they from? Okay, that's.
my guess.
Here's that.
Yeah, I was lazy.
You go there. There, lock down. Get the map, be walking. Like a week to what? I think it's yeah,
Yeah, but that's kind of. I think you can get that ready.
Science classes you will do.
I'm gonna be taking like.
What else would I take? I already take the AP Bio and the AP Bio.
I want to take
Delta. Would you like a smoothie bowl?
I want to get.
Andre. You like this one?
That's really nice. Oh my god. No, why not? Really?
I know.
No, I want to go.
I'm not sure. There you go. Let's go better already. All right, so number one. You take that class? I'm not that guy. All right, so let's go take out our action paper number 1 to 9. Oh, you already get this. I was gonna say, yeah, today I have work for you.
No, I don't know what other sign I'm saying. Yeah, I'm seriously.
Huh?
You see how the laws myself.
All right, begin. 9, let's go to 9. Okay, number 1. Who was MVP of Super Bowl 8?
Because he's a cheese.
Oh, that's why I was like,
My assumption is none of you prepared for the test.
they're gonna lose the Super Bowl this year.
It's celebratory for 49.
Who's gonna win Super Bowl MVP this year?
Quick finish up. Where'd you get that from? You ever made that?
And deliver.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you need one? You wanted to handle it?
You are hiding this one.
Oh, I'm filming. Everyone say goodbye.